Welcome to the BCBAs Who Build podcast powered by Head Start Health, where we have real conversations about entrepreneurship in the world of applied behavior analysis. I'm your host, Dr. Sara Feldman, and on this show, we talk about the clinical, operational, and human side of building businesses in ABA. Whether you're a BCBA who's dreaming of owning your own company, an owner who has already started it and is in the thick of it, or an RBT with big plans and want to peek behind the scenes, this podcast is for you. Each episode, we sit down with clinicians, experts, entrepreneurs, and leaders in the ABA space to talk about the challenges, opportunities, and lessons that come with building meaningful services and sustainable practices. In today's episode is all about clinical quality, and not just the marketing term, but true clinical quality. And with that, I'm excited to welcome our guest, Dr. Kristen Byra, to the conversation. So let's get started. Welcome, Dr. Kristen Byra.
Thanks for having me.
Amazing. Yeah, thanks for being here on our second episode. I feel like it's a big deal for us, and definitely to have a content expert like you. So thank you so much for being here. I'd love to kind of just get started and hear how you got into the ABA field, because just like me, I'm an ABA dinosaur. I've been in it for a long time. So what got you into the field?
Yeah, great question. So in high school, I thought I wanted to do maybe be like a school psychologist or do counseling. I knew I wanted to work with children. Both my parents were teachers, and everyone thought I was going to be a teacher, and didn't quite want to take that same path. But I took a class my junior year of undergrad, behavior modification, and I said, this stuff makes a lot of sense. And then that summer, I needed a summer job. I was back home since my dad was in the district. He said, hey, do you want to be a teacher's aide? And then it would also carry over into, ESY, extended school year. The little kid's 3, and I think he has something called autism. I'm like, okay, sign me up. Yeah. So I met this little guy, and I got there, and the special ed teacher said, hey, he likes to go for walks, and he doesn't eat solid food. He drinks out of a bottle. Good luck. And that was all the instructions that I got. And I said, there must be a better way than this, right? So I started learning a lot more about autism, a lot more about applied behavior analysis, working with my professors at the university. And so I got to see this little young man grow and accomplish lots of things by getting those kinds of services. And so I talked to my undergrad advisor and said, I want to be a behavior analyst. How do I do that? And so he said, you have to go to Western Michigan University and study under Dick Malott. And so that's what I did. And so I wound up getting my master's and PhD there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so when I think about like go-to people for quality and to really think about frameworks for quality, you are the person that comes to mind. So, I mean, from the undergrad to getting your PhD, and then now commanding this concept of quality in ABA, kind of walk me through those kind of links.
Sure. Sure, absolutely. So, I mean, I think it did start with my first introduction of like, surely there's more than just taking walks, right? Like, how are we building skills? How are we getting him off a bottle? Because he's 3 and we should be chewing, right? Because that's how we're going to have speech development and things like that. So I think from the very beginning of my career, like, how do we make things better, right? How do we make things better for this particular kiddo? How do we make things better for the family? His mom was a single mom. She was widowed, and so she never went anywhere. She never had a babysitter because she didn't know who could possibly stay home with her son. And so I started babysitting for her. Keep in mind, this was pre-RBT hood, pre all the other things.
We're not doing the ethical guidelines.
Right.
Yep. We understand.
Yep. Definitely missteps, back when, I was in that space. But I remember her telling me she couldn't, go into the grocery store because he just got so obsessed with the automatic doors, right? It took 20 minutes just to walk through them and things like that. So like even back then I started thinking, man, like, how do we help families navigate this differently? And we were really fortunate at my undergrad practicum. I did some time at the May Center, and I just got really great training at that location as well. every kiddo there had an assigned teacher, actually, because it was an alternative school placement. And just I had shadowing and overlaps, I think, for probably like close to 2 months before they're like, okay, you can do a little bit on your own. And so I just got phenomenal training, BST at its finest. And then I was able to do that at Western as well. We had a partnership with a special needs school. So it actually was a public school. Every kid there was on an IEP. Not every kiddo had autism. It just, if you had an IEP and your district wasn't quite sure how to best serve you, you came there. We had kids 18 months to like up to 23 years of age. And so we just had a really fantastic setup. I will say too, I was pre-medical model. So when I was doing all of my hours, this was not insurance funded. And so we had a little bit different, I think, parameters to operate under, which I do think in some cases made it easier. We weren't concerned about, the 15-minute CPT code blocks. And I wonder, do a lit review and that doesn't count as a billable. I was just trained in under a different paradigm. So I do think I have some privilege of how I was trained because of the funding sources.
Yeah. I mean, I think some of the things you just mentioned about just the intensity of the training, and that feels just distinctly different than a lot of different BCBAs that I speak with now who have kind of, I mean, even the BACB just came out with like you can't have a year-long master's degree. It needs to be longer than that, which feels like, of course, but so in your mind, do you think those two things are related in the movement to the medical model versus kind of where we used to be with
Yeah.
regards to quality of internships?
Yeah. Again, when I was a practicum student, of course, they weren't paying me.
Right.
I was paying the school credit, right? I was paying the school to place me somewhere, and then the university and that site had an agreement, right? So, I was paying for my own training and experience and things like that. And so there's some different options then. If they're not worried about how am I going to pay Kristen for her work this week, because she didn't quote bill, or we had to
Right.
take time away from someone else's training, like that wasn't a barrier. And so I think the intensity of the training is much higher, as opposed to now where, oh, you're a BT and you're going to become an RBT, watch these 40 hours worth of videos that I hope you actually attend to, and you're not simultaneously have Netflix or TikTok on your other screen.
Right.
It was all in person, right? It wasn't asynchronous learning. It was, everything in person. When we had our undergraduate practicum, when I was a graduate student, when we were supervising them, we also had a class. We had a seminar as well once a week. And so I'm going to see you in the clinic, but then we're also going to meet collective as a group and, go do a deeper dive into terminology and on all those kinds of things. And there was a prerequisite that they had to go through our kind of intro behavior analysis course as an undergrad. It was a Psych 360 class. And so they already have had that foundational like book learning before they came to us as well. And so that kind of training is just not something I see anymore in
Yeah.
the field. Not anything close, unless they're again at some kind of university partnership. Which, to be honest, and I hope I'm wrong, I just don't see that happening as much anymore. Where there's
Yeah.
community partnerships between either community colleges or universities, like with any kind of clinical setup to get practicum hours and things of that nature, because students care a lot about their grades. So it's great when they have an attendance policy, right? And they
Yeah.
have to come, where it counts against their grade. And when we're doing monitoring and fidelity, that counts towards their grade. Like they're very much motivated to do well because they'd like to get an A in their class, to be able to graduate and have really nice references for any job that they're going to apply for. And so it was lovely working with the practicum students because, and a lot of them actually wind up staying. They did an intermediate practicum, we called it, and then an advanced. So they did multiple semesters. And then a lot of them became, graduate students at Western or other places. So it was a really nice kind of career development path for them to go into a graduate program with a bunch of experience and really great training.
Yeah. I it For me, that kind of hands-on experience was definitely something I had to like forge my way and to find between I started as a school teacher and then kind of put together a bunch of different experiences, but it was more ad hoc. It was not something that was built into my school system. I think when I was getting my master's, they had just started like a lab that you could do that. But there are so many now that are just collecting their hours when it comes to, they're at their job, and it's quick, and it's how quickly can we scale and bring more BCBAs on to serve, and the need is there and the pressure is there, and definitely understand the different kind of things tugging at it. But it definitely creates a need for some better parameters when it comes to how do we make sure that people are supported when they graduate and they know what they're doing. And so it's just a different world for sure.
Yeah.
For
And
sure.
I do think we have, unfortunately, traded a bit access for quality. Like I said, I'm pre-medical model, and so there was not insurance funding when I was in school, and so folks were. I mean, we had families moving across the country to Kalamazoo, Michigan, so they could access the school that we had our practicum at. But then we had other families who were taking out second mortgages on their house to be able to pay for private services, and so I don't, of course, want to go back to that. Also, the incidence level when I was in graduate school was like 101 and 125. And so obviously that has changed significantly now. I don't know if we're at 1 in 36 or 33. I haven't looked recently.
Yeah.
I know it's in the 30s somewhere. So clearly that has changed as well. And I'm so glad that their coverage is being, paid for insurance now, and Medicaid and things like that. So I don't want to mince words and say I want to go back to when that wasn't supported. But I do think with the burst of, hey, we're going to cover this, came this huge cry to the field of like, hey, we need more of you, which of course I want people to rise to the challenge and go provide services that are needed. But I don't want people to just be pushed through the system when they're not really ready to do this, because then we're not seeing the same level of care as we could if folks took their time.
Yeah. And I think one thing that I notice about really great BCBAs, but also entrepreneurs in the EBA field, is this like underlying curiosity of there's got to be a better way, from kind of the first kiddo that you had, and you're like, there's got to be a better way. We have to be able to support. And it's not just, he has a bottle and goes for walks and good luck. There's got to be a systematic way to support. There's a science behind it. So with that kind of idea of there's got to be a better way, what has been taking up kind of the most space in your mind right now about ABA?
Sure. I think that from multiple levels in the system that folks simply don't know what they don't know. And so we have business owners who are not clinicians, which is fine. I'm not here to, throw shade at non-clinical owners. Like I'm not. I think I do know some agencies that the owners are not clinicians at all, and they do a really great job. And so there's not, I think some folks get in this binary thinking of like, if you're not a clinician, it's going to be awful. And if you are a clinician, it's automatically going to be amazing. And like that's neither of those statements are true.
Binary thinking in general is going
Yes.
to result in really bad outcomes no matter what. So
Yes. But I do think there are some business owners, clinician and non-clinician, that simply don't know what they don't know in terms of billing and licensure laws and what good clinical services should look at and look like. And so if you're a clinician working at one of those places and that's where you're kind of raised, as I'll call it, we're kind of raised there, then that becomes your norm. And like, oh, well, that's how it must be done because that's how this particular clinic does it. And then they move and go work at another job. And they're like, oh, this is different. Like, why is this different? Like, and then who's right or who's wrong or why are we making the decision? It may not even be a right or a wrong, but why in this particular scenario is someone engaged in behavior like this? And they're not really understanding the, kind of the mechanisms for those decisions. That's where I'm on the struggle bus with our field of, I think there's a lot of just misinformation and just underinformed clinicians who are practicing. And then where does that kind of ownership, where should it land? And I see a lot of BCBAs, well, look, my company told me so. And like, I feel for you because they're technically your boss, but you're still the practicing clinician. And so when it comes to clinical work, that ownership then falls back to you. So when the complaint comes to the licensing boards, because I sit on the committee for our state, and he said, my boss told me, and your boss isn't a clinician, not a BCBA. I can't go yell at them, right? I can't be like, hey, that was really poor advice that you gave. We're now breaking, different ethical, codes and things like that. The ownership comes back on that clinician, and they're the ones who are going to be coming before the committee to explain, why they engaged in certain behaviors and things like that. And it's not fun for anyone involved. We don't like it either. We committee members we are not excited to hear complaints at all. But that's where we see a lot of the miscommunications that have happened, or the underinformed. I didn't know that, or my boss told me it was okay, so I did it. And that's not a good space for anyone to be in, because in the end of the day, it's usually the clients that's suffering from those decisions.
Yeah, I think so that's interesting. There are a lot of people who work in those large organizations, and like you said, they are just almost a byproduct of the system of everything that they've created. But you're saying really the ownership and kind of the total ownership of your own personal actions really fall on you. And
Yeah.
so even if you were trained in this way, it's your job to be curious and to understand the why behind it, and then think on your own 2 feet.
Yes.
And I think that's unique and different than kind of some of the different stories I've heard of where I'm doing it because this is what I'm asked to do, and that struggle between the system and the individual. And I feel for those individuals because at the end of the day, you need to be paid, and in order to get paid, you need to make sure that you don't throw up every red flag to your employer of like, I'm difficult to work with, or I'm always challenging you. So it's a hard place, I think, for especially young
Yes.
people in their career, where they're just grateful to have a job, and grateful to be able to stand on their own. So I guess going back to that idea of it's up to you to be educated and to make those smart decisions for yourself, let's kind of just clearly define when we talk about quality, what does that mean? Because I think everybody has a different interpretation and different learning history that's associated with it. But I think we could probably define it very clearly for ABA.
I'm not as confident as you are in that.
I feel like we should be able to.
We should.
Maybe
We
it's
should
like
be
we
able to.
should, but if I ask 5 different BCBAs, I'm going to get 5 different answers. So, what's your 2 feet? What's your opinion on
Sure.
how we measure that?
Yeah, so I've spent quite a bit of time working on a quality assessment that I have that's available, and it's free to take, and it's filled with all sorts of free job aids and resources and things, because you come to the end and realize, oh, I'm not engaging in practices that are in alignment with the standards of care of our field. Here's the course correct, right? It's not just a finger pointing survey. It's a how can I help you do this better type of survey. That's the intention behind it. So we're looking at some critical areas. So we're looking at things like data analysis. How long are you going before you're making some kind of determination about a goal? And it doesn't mean we're going to trash the goal or discontinue the goal. We may need to go in and just do some retraining, because the goal itself is a great idea, but the treatment fidelity piece isn't going the way that we thought it might go, right? So how closely are we looking at our data analysis? Those daily sessions, what does that look like? Are we actually engaging in meaningful exchanges with our learner consistently and throughout the day, right? So not, oh, I did this program in Central Reach, so there's a minimum trial count of 5. I've done 5, so I'm done today. That's not what that looks like, right? So how often are we providing opportunities for them to engage in meaningful learning opportunities? Caregiver guidance. Woo. Dr. Feldman, as a field, we are not doing
Great.
we are not doing well in that area. I don't have the Central Reach data pulled up in front of me, but it's gotten worse in terms of number of auth hours that we utilize, that 5-6 code, the caregiver guidance. And we are leaving so many authorized hours on the table, saying like, hey, we're going to meet with parents, at least once a month, and I need this many hours then. And the end of the auths, what, 60%, 40%? I think I want to say Central Reach, it was even worse than that, but at least half, I think, would be a safe number that we are not meeting. And so for an authorization of 6 months, you've only had a contact with that parent 3 times, or like maybe not even that much. Like we're not doing well as a field in terms of providing helpful resources to our families. So there's a very large section on caregiver guidance. There's also a large section on just supervision in general. Are we just saying, "Hey, there's a new program in Central Reach," or hire us? I mean, to be picking on Central Reach, but our practice management software, there is a new program, RBT, go do it. What? No, here's the program. Take a chance to read it. When you're done,
Right.
I'm going to show you, ask questions as we go along, and then I'm going to have you do it, right? Are we really using BST for every client, for every program, for every RBT? Not, oh, I trained one of them, so hopefully the rest of them are going to figure it out kind of modality, right? And so
Right.
we want to look at those particular areas. We want to look at fidelity because, again, if I show you on January 1st and I don't come back and check on it until April, 20th, that's a problem. If you've been running that program incorrectly for 4 months, I've also be challenging why have we not mastered that goal in 4 months, right? So
Right. Yeah.
those
I have more
types
questions.
of yes, I'm gonna have
Yeah.
lots of questions. So those areas are ones that I'm really wanting people to focus on in terms of are we doing all the things that are best not only for our clients, our stakeholders, and then the technicians and RBTs that work with them as well. Like it's not just a singular focus of like, is the client doing well? Like all those pieces need to occur as well so that I don't think things are going to go well for the client if your technicians aren't supported. I don't think things are going to well for this client outside of your clinic if caregivers and stakeholders aren't supported, right? And so while the client is the nucleus of our little cell, there's a whole bunch of other stuff. Mitochondria, I don't know. I don't remember. Human biology is a long time ago.
Biology was not, yeah, that's not the science of practice, but I understand.
Yeah. Yeah. Or they're the sun, right? In our solar system, they're the sun. But lots of other, planets are orbiting around them, and we need to have those considered as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think we think of client skill acquisition as a lagging indicator. Those are things that, if all else is going well, then we should have really good outcomes. But there are so many other things of leading indicators that tell me whether or not that outcome is going to happen. And those are the things that I think we lose sight of measuring. And so it's very misleading of this idea of like, well, I'm just going to focus on the end. Well, we have to pay attention to the inputs in order to create that. Um, I I wonder kind of if you had to speak to a BCBA that she was just getting started or he was just getting started, they're part of a larger organization. How would you want to give them like that pep talk to say, let's organize these things first to set you up for success?
Sure. Um, so, I mean, I think the first thing I would say, and I know this is not happening at a lot of organizations, once you get those 4 letters and your credentials, they're like, go do the thing on your own. I would tell them that to the best of their ability, treat their first 2 years as basically a post-certification practicum experience style. When I finished my master's and got my BCBA, I still did additional practicum hours as a doc student under different advisors. So I was working with different clients and getting, additional training. And then I remember my advisor at that time told me, like, when I go get my job, do not go be the smartest person in the room. Like, you're not done, right? Like, you're not done. And this is, this is post certification now. I'd been certified for, almost 3 years by the time I graduated, did my PhD another 3. So I was already practicing for 3 years, and she's still, she's right. And I took her advice, and I certainly did not go and, and do that. I wanted to go be at a place where I was going to continue to learn and grow as a clinician. I have been certified for over 18 years. I am still learning and growing as a clinician. And so the best advice I can tell anyone is to not rush. Like, do not rush through your supervision. Fieldwork hours, don't just, 2000, boop, done. Like, I will learn zero amount more during this time. And then once you still have those letters, like, you are certainly not done. So as you're starting out, align yourself. If you can't find it in your own organization, seek out external mentorship. There's plenty of us in the field who love doing this, and many of us doing it for very cheap, aka free. And to
Yeah.
get, additional help for folks because you need it. You are going to have a client that comes on your caseload that is going to throw you for a loop. You're going to get a caregiver that you're like, oh man, I just don't know how to get through this family. I don't know how to connect with them. They don't show, what do I do? There's going to be things that throw you for a loop, and you want to have that support piece there. Um, in terms of in your active daily schedule, I would say organization is your friend. So having a way, how am I making sure that I'm checking in with each RBT that I need to? Not only just to get the 5%, that's an RBT requirement. But when we're looking at a clinic, client consultation, that's different, right? I may need 10% with client one, but client two needs 20, right? And that may be because there's, extra challenging behaviors. We are just a kiddo who need lots of program modification because they're not learning in the traditional ways. I know a lot of people default to that 5% because that's what the BACB mandates for RBTs, but we need to remember that's for RBTs, not for the client supervision. And I'd say there's plenty of RBTs that need more than 5% too. Like these are minimum standards, they're your floor, not your ceiling. And I don't think folks always think about it in that way. I would like us to be doing some more critical thinking and not compliance driven so much, if that makes sense. So I'm doing the thing because some regulatory body told me to do it, but I'm going to engage in these types of behaviors because this is what my client warrants in order to be successful.
Yeah. One of the things that really struck me on this concept of mentorship and finding your community of people is I come in contact with a lot of early stage BCBAs, and certainty is something that I think a lot of people want, either because they are nervous that maybe that's what the job is supposed to be. I'm supposed to be certain and be that expert, and I'm supposed to tell you exactly what it is. Maybe it's a bit of imposter syndrome. It's kind of hard to know exactly, but I find this kind of dichotomy between certainty and asking really curious questions and being a problem solver and a connector, and knowing that I don't know everything. And I'm not supposed to know everything, but what I'm supposed to know is to gather information and connect some dots, and then bring it to other people who might know a little bit more, and then ask for more evidence. And really, my job as a BCBA is not to solve based off of this one thing, but really to be a detective and to see, okay, like what are all these tiny pieces of information? Because if I'll say the adage of you've met one kid, of course, and that's really what it is. But to really help shift that early stage BCBA frame of thinking from I know all to I know how to ask smart questions, and I know that I don't know, and that's okay. And so the curiosity is something that I really love to see in super, super smart early stage BCBAs, because that's really the only way we're going to be able to continue to scale and support the needs for the kiddos. So, I mean, you mentioned finding that system, mentorship, and then staying really organized, and knowing, okay, I need to make sure that I am meeting with all the stakeholders here, not just meeting compliance standards. So who is your actual, customer in this? It's not the BACB. The customers are our parents, our caregivers, and our kiddos, and to an extent our RBTs that we are supporting, because we can't deliver any of these services without them. So that makes sense to me. I think one of the things that I see people struggle with is just this idea of the systemic pressures, So
Yeah.
I come in and other people have priorities for me, and those priorities may not be what, you just listed out here. So if you're designing a business, let's say from the ground up, what are some of the things that you might want that business owner to be thinking about in order to keep priorities, going in the right direction?
Sure. I think it's different if you are a non-clinical owner in terms of what your expectations are. I would say for young BCBAs, advocacy is also something they need to work on for themselves. If they're going to go work for someone else, I mean, I think the most recent reports too from the BACB, I think it's like a year old now, but there's like 108,000 job postings, and there's 88,000 BCBAs. So I do want BCBAs to understand that they are in the driver's seat in terms of there are not enough of us for the jobs that are open for us. And so if you're a brand new BCBA, you passed your exam, 6 months ago, and you don't feel ready to take on a candidate, you don't want to have a behavior analytic trainee under you. And there are companies like, well, we just do that here. Like, well, I don't. Right? I would say 9 times out of 10, they are not going to fire you because they need you. And if they are going to, because you're saying, hey, I'm not ready, I don't feel confident in my abilities to train someone else, and they let you go, I think you have also just saved yourself from working at a really terrible place.
Right.
In terms of your career longevity. And it's much better to know that 6 months into your position than you committing, 5 years of your life there and you could have gone somewhere better. I know you mentioned earlier you don't want to be the difficult person or the squeaky wheel, or every 3 minutes you're like, hey, I don't agree with this. But I think if you're finding yourself in an organization where you're having those types of questions every 4 or 5 minutes, like that's also probably the signs to like run the other direction. And you'll probably have a new job or 3 offers by the end of, the week if you go on
Right.
LinkedIn and say open for hire. Because there are like I think this is not the employer landscape. It is definitely the employee landscape. We have the upper hand. And I wish people would leverage that over like an extra PTO day, or I want a sign on bonus. Like I want a mentor. I want a mentor for the next year that is going to be committed to, expanding my, clinical expertise. That's what I want. I don't need, a 3-day weekend for whatever holiday. Like I want a mentor. I want guarantee that I'm not going to have to take on a candidate in my first year. Like those are the things that I would recommend folks start asking for in their onboarding job negotiation things. That's what I would tell them to ask for. I know the $5,000 sign-up bonus sounds really nice, but when you see those things, you have to wonder, why do we need to offer such kinds of, I've seen $20,000 sign-up bonuses, and I
Yes.
have to wonder, why on earth do we need to be paid this? Unless it's like, oh, it's in like this remote town, and there's like only like a Taco Bell and like no other resources.
Then I kind of
Then
understand
I
that,
kind of get it. No one really wants to work
but
there. But outside of that, if you're in like a metro area and they're offering those kind of sign-on bonuses, like to me, that's a major red flag that they can't get staff in and they can't keep them there.
yeah.
Um,
Okay, so I'm gonna go off script just a bit from some of the questions I've asked you, but you have um, made me kind of have my wheels turning. So, okay, the BCBA is in the driver's seat. What are questions that you would love to hear that BCBA ask in the interview?
that's a great question. I'm an Office fan, and so I made a meme not too long ago with Michael Scott, saying like I'm gonna interview them even harder, because
Yes.
because I do like you BCBAs who are listening to this, like you do have the power in this communication. So instead of them just firing questions at you and talking about your experience and this and that, like that's great. They should want to know, but you should want to know those same type of questions coming back from them in terms of what is my caseload size going to be? Who determines my caseload in terms of
I love
if
that.
you're in a clinic that is serving itty bitties like 24 months up to age 13, and you've only worked with the 6 and under crowd, are they going to assign you a 13-year-old? Because I don't know what your comfortability with that is or should be.
Right.
Or if they're going to give you the 13-year-old, are they going to have the mentor say, hey, technically this kid's on your caseload, but Dr. Feldman is going to be, kind of co-treating with you and helping you gain
Right.
the skills to be able to be confident to work with a 13-year-old who only needs social skills, where typically you've been working in the EIBI space. That would be cool. I would like to see
Yeah.
that. But I'd be asking those types of questions of, kind of what's my caseload going to look like? Who determines that caseload? Can I say no to a client? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Can I say no to candidates because I don't feel ready in my first year? If I do feel like I'm in a place to start supervising, what does that structure look like? Is there a curriculum that this company is utilizing, or it's just Wild West and like you decide whatever they should be learning
Yeah.
as a candidate? I'd be asking some of those types of questions to know how much power do I have once I'm in that position versus it's just top down, this is what we do here, kind of mentality, which I would not recommend you align yourself with.
You've been listening to the BCBAs Who Build podcast, a place to learn, grow, and find freedom in the ABA world. If you've been considering starting your own ABA practice and taking your career into your own hands, reach out to us today at headstart.health. Our team of BCBAs can walk you through the exact steps you need to turn your goals into reality. Career autonomy is only one click away at headstart.health. All right, so I would love to kind of hear about any sort of difficult decisions you've had to make, because we talked about, a clinician needs to stand on their own 2 feet when it comes to when quality is going to happen. You are the clinician, you are the quote unquote expert, at least you're the licensed one. And so tell me about a time where you've had to make a difficult decision in the name of quality, and what did that look like?
Sure. So I don't do candidate supervision anymore because I'm not in a clinic. I don't see clients other than through consultation and mentorship, but I used to do supervision quite frequently. And I had a young lady who came to our organization, and she had, I think, maybe 300 or 400 hours left, to complete before she would be eligible to sit. And at our company, supervision was free. And so there was no money exchange between the candidate and the supervisor or the company. And so unlimited supervision to be able to complete as many hours as you needed. But as I was talking with her and going through the contract and going through some of her competencies and how they were achieving those things, it was very clear that she was not engaging in, behavior analytic activities to gain any of those hours. And so even if another supervisor was willing to sign off on those hours, I told her, I do not think you're going to meet, competency standards to be able to sit for your exam and do well in the next, 300 or 400, however many hours were left. I said, so what I'd really like to do is go back and, do an assessment and see where the holes are, and we can, backfill and gap fill and get you to a place where you are going to be successful to take the exam. But it may be, 700, 800, more hours to be able to do that. Of course, still all your hours as a trainee will be paid. You don't have to pay for our supervision. We will get you through. And she said no. And she did not accept the job offer to come work with us and went to a different agency. And I'm not sure how it went over there. But, I really wanted to support her because I wanted her to do well, but I was not willing to say in 200 or 300 hours, sign on the dotted line and say, sure, you're ready to go and not only take the exam, but then go practice, right? So it's not just eligible to take the exam. And then, you still are doing some post exam work. No, once you pass the exam, you're credentialed. And so I was not willing to sign that, off for her. And so she decided to leave, and, I wish her all the best. I hope she's doing well now, and I hope she found a different supervisor, was able to fill those gaps and whatnot. But it was tough. We obviously lost a potentially good employee, but I just wasn't willing and unable to do what she wanted.
Yeah, I think that's really kind of been some of the hardest situations in employment and being a leader, is when you have to be clear in order to be kind, and it's not going to feel necessarily great in the moment, because I think as BCBAs, we're helpers, and generally we want to be hopeful and insightful and and all of those things, but sometimes we have to say something that is clear and direct and important in order to have ultimate, I think, clarity moving forward, and an understanding and level setting. The worst places I've ever been as an owner or a leader is when I have yes manned myself into a situation for somebody, and then we get to that point and that person didn't rise to the occasion the way I had in my mind dreamed of. I was like, yeah, they'll connect the dots, they'll figure it out, they'll go study on their own, they'll want it. But I realized I wanted it more for them than they wanted it for themselves. And breaking the news to somebody like that, of we've told you yes all the way up to this point, but secret's out, you're not qualified, or you don't know how to do it. But I've been the one who shaped that the entire time. It's the worst feeling, and it's a mistake that I think, really, for me, I only made once or twice, and then from there I was like, no, we're going to have a hard conversation at the beginning, and we're going to make sure that we're all set to go with that. And we either agree and we move forward, or we agree to disagree and we part ways. But that's better than building you up just to
Yeah.
break you down later on. And so those are the parts of, I think, business ownership for me that I've just been like, I failed this person by being nice at the moment.
Yeah.
And so it sucks, but it is what it is, and it's what you need to do that. And for me, that was a skill that I had to learn and develop and figure out how to deliver that news without making it about myself, because I realized I was just trying to escape the uncomfortable conversation. I just wanted to be like, yeah, of course, it's hopeful. We'll go with it. But at the end of the day, you know, I'm not that person, so I can't do it for them.
Yeah.
And they're going to need to be able to have the learning history to get themselves there.
Yeah. To be
Um,
clear is kind, right? And to be clear is kind. So
Sometimes I just have to kind of, it's like a mantra chant of like, I just need to say it because I, deep in my gut, I'm a people pleaser. I want to please. But that is not really pleasing because I'm going to disappoint in the end if I round the edges for you. So, okay. So if you're talking to directly a BCBA right now, we've got a BCBA who's listening. They say, okay, I hear like all of these things. I understand. We can do better. We can be better. But that's a lot. And I don't know if I'm up for a total task. So what do I need to do? Where should I start, right now in order to make a change for the better with regards to quality?
sure. So I think that answer to that question is going to be different for every person. And so, with the background, my master's program was dual track. We did autism and OBM. And so my systems brain wants me to bring you down that pathway. So, the reason I created that assessment, it is 28 questions and everyone is scoring very differently on it. There's a few overlaps, but I think we had like 144 people take it. And there is varying scores across the board, but across the categories. And so some folks are doing really well and they're getting caregiver guidance in at least once a month. They're doing caregiver surveys every 6 months to make sure that we're getting on track. But then in the area of data analytics, they're not reviewing the data. They have no system in place to make sure that they're looking at all of their data in consistent fashion. Then I have some folks that are doing BST for every goal, right? Which is whoop, high five all day long, but they're not meeting with caregivers, right? And so if I was to say, what should you go do right now? I'm going to say, go take the survey and find out where you're not in alignment, because then you can then choose which piece you feel comfortable in conquering this week, this quarter, this calendar year. And it is designed that you can go back and retake it. And so if you're like, I'm going to pick these 2 things, right? And then next month, I'm going to go take it again. And then I'm going to go add 2 more things or 1 more thing. It is a marathon, not a sprint. I think people, if you're like me, if I see a to-do list with 100 things on it, I'm like, nope, it's just like too much. I'm going to do nothing. Like, you're going to just be paralyzed by like the just sheer amount of things that need to get better. So it really should be like, what's one thing? Like, let me just pick one thing. I'll get that organized and just part of our system. It's part of our workflow now. It's habit. We're doing it all the time. And then I'm going to come back and what's the next thing I think I can accomplish? And so I'd like folks to look at it from a systems analysis perspective. If not, what should every BCBA go do right now? Because some of them may already be doing it, but there's like 10 other things they should do better instead. So I'd like them to go do a self-assessment, see where their gaps are, and then what feels feasible to them to go do. And in terms of feasibility, if they go and take the assessment, they'll be able to unlock all the job aids of like, I'm not getting the trial count I'm looking for. Like, how could I go do that? Go use job aid. Hey, I don't know how to develop a survey. Hey, these are great resources by smarter, better people than me that have already done this. Go read the work by Dr. Rachel Taylor and Linda LeBlanc, and go get that sorted. So there's resources there, because I don't want people just to get an assessment, then be like, oh, I'm failing at this or not doing as well as I thought I would, and then we're just defeated. It's, hey, I see some room for improvement. how can I course correct? And then the system will help you course correct. So you're not doing it alone and you're not sitting just in a spot of like, well, crap, I'm not doing very well. Like it's going to help you do better. Like that's the intention of the survey, is to find out where your gaps are and then help you problem solve.
And so, does anybody make a perfect score on it?
No, we don't have anyone yet.
Good.
No.
I mean, my bleeding heart, of course, is like, yeah, we should have perfect. It should be perfect. But I think what's been really great about this conversation is the through line of it's slow but steady. Ask smart questions, surround yourself with smarter people, and it's progress. It's progress over perfection. It's going to take time. This is a marathon. And I think a lot of times we land with certainty of a BCBA is a terminal letter and now I am done, and turn that brain off. But every other medical professional out there has ongoing, evolution of who they are and what they do and how they think about their practice, and what that manifests itself. And so I think that is one of the really cool things about the assessment, and I'm gonna really encourage everybody to go on and do. It's free resources. Like there's nothing better than it's a free resource, and it gives you a place to start really thinking critically about who I am as a clinician right now and who I would like to be. And then, my ACT mindset is also what is taking me away from, acting in those behaviors, and what are some of the things that could bring me closer. And it's not about shutting down, it's just about noticing and making small successive approximations towards this end goal, which is serving everyone really well. And so if you guys haven't taken the assessment, I definitely recommend going on, taking the assessment. I've taken it. I put in my old business of what I knew to be true. In January of last year, I put in the information just to see, where would we have landed, and it told me so many great things. And we had just gone through a comprehensive clinical audit, during our sale process, but it still pointed out really great areas where I was like, yeah, that was on my to-do list. I was like, I really wanted to go there and keep going on that. And so there is that. I would love you to share just a little bit about your school as well, because even I have found so many valuable resources on there as well. So how does your school connected to this overall mission of quality?
Sure. So I do know, I think there is in a lot of places barriers to mentorship, or like-minded folks who are like, hey, I really want to do better and I'm just not really sure who to talk to or reach out to, or maybe I'm the only one who thinks this way. And so I want to create a community that's kind of, challenging that status quo and without cost being a barrier. So school is 100% free. All the CEUs in the school, both live and recorded, are also free, because I don't want folks who want to keep learning. I want to reinforce that. And so if you want to come and, do some asynchronous learning or come to our live events, it is free. We also have every Thursday, we have either what we call a knowledge transfer. So it's not as structured as a CEU. It's not for credit, but we have different SMEs come in, or anyone that's interested in a topic and kind of say, hey, here's what I'm working on. Maybe you want to try this out too. We just actually were talking about fieldwork supervision last Thursday. We were talking about telehealth delivery services the week before that. We've had Dr. Adam Ventura come in and talk about AI and its ethical use and things like that. So those are every Thursday at 9 a.m. PST, 12 Eastern. We also do a war game during some of those meetings. So a war game is someone comes in with kind of like a tricky thing that they're trying to initiative they want to get done in their organization, or just something like, hey, this is something I'm trying to accomplish. And then you can have a group of peers come and say, hey, I've tried this, or have you thought about this? Or I can connect you to someone, because we have a pretty good network to come in and do that. And then we also have the community resources page. So there's just other journal articles, job aids, and things like that, from like toileting to we have some really neat resources on catatonia. I've been working with a psychiatrist who specializes in that, so we have some neat resources in there. So and there's always the option to put in the feed like, hey, does anyone have anything about this? And then folks will respond to you, and then we put it in the library with resources and stuff like that too. So I do have a content contest going on right now in my school. The leadership performers, the top 3 will get, the first and second place winner will get a free in-person ticket to ABA Cares in Boston this summer. And then the third place winner has like a free virtual ticket to be able to attend ABA Cares. So it'll be a good time. I travel zero amount for conferences, and I make an exception for ABA Cares, so it's going to be a good time.
Yes.
So yeah, we have a really active group. We have a lot of folks who just block off their schedule every Thursday, which is great. And we have some really interesting CEs that I think folks would hopefully find valuable.
Yeah. And there are a lot of choices for people to pick, ABA communities. They can go onto Facebook and find so many, but your community specifically, it's not anonymous. We're not just in there posting information about the shoulds. It's actually evidence-based. It's people being vulnerable and asking questions and saying, after 10 years in the ABA field, I still have questions. And there's a whole group of people who are participating to support. And I think that that's what makes it just distinctly different than a run-of-the-mill Facebook group that might be hosted by who knows,
right,
and what the intentions are. And so I found it really refreshing. I'm in there as well. So make sure you guys join the school as well. It's an incredible place. Okay, so to wrap up this conversation, I have some fun and silly, just rapid fire questions. Just say the thing that comes to the top of your head. We do it with everyone, and if you pause, then you're out. No, I'm just rapid fire questions. So let's get started. So sweet or sour?
Sweet.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
What is your current guilty pleasure?
I watch way too many episodes of The Office on repeat. I've seen every season way too many times.
Yes. So good. I probably say I'll declare bankruptcy, or I'm declaring bankruptcy multiple times a month. So yes. Okay, what's something you've changed your mind in about ABA?
Ooh, that's a rapid fire question.
I know that
what has changed my mind? Oh, pass, Sarah. I got to come back to that
perfect. That's good. What's a hill you'll die on professionally?
Clinical quality above all else.
Yes. Yeah. What's one ABA green flag?
That they provide ongoing mentorship for BCBAs.
I love that. What's one piece of advice you'd tell your younger self?
Maybe you need a second PhD.
No.
Yep.
So many years. That's like the PTSD will come back. Yes. Okay. That's good. Though. All right. Let's fill in the blank on this one, and we'll end on this. You might be ready to build your own ABA company if.
Ooh, so I would say you love stress and hate sleep. If you are able to defer payments to yourself for a long time, I'm not sure folks really understand, how long the billing lags are for insurance. That would be one. And I think most importantly, that you are not only going to be willing to, you have access to a community to help you, but you're also going to be willing to listen to folks who have done this. And when they tell you, hey, this is a bad idea, what you want to do, X, Y, or Z, or hey, you need to do this, that you listen. I don't think anyone, if they're in a mentorship position, they're not trying to cut you down. They're trying to prevent you from making mistakes that they've either lived themselves or have seen other people live. And so if you go into this thinking, I know everything and I'm going to do it all on my own, not a great idea.
Yeah. Entrepreneurship is the most humbling
Yes.
experience of it all. You realize very quickly that you know nothing at all.
Yeah. And it's so much more.
Do.
And it's so much more than Yeah, and it's so much more than just being a really good clinician. You can be a fantastic clinician, but there's so many pieces, and there are going to be a lot of non-preferred activities that you also have to engage in, right? There's a lot of administrative things and lawyers and all of credentialing stuff that's not fun, and it's not doing the clinical work that you really enjoy, working with families and kids. Like there's a lot of that stuff that you either have to do yourself or be, financially able to pay someone else, to do for you. And you have to be, I think, cognizant of that
Yeah,
as well.
you need the community.
Yes.
You need support. You can't do it alone, even if you are a sole proprietor on that.
Yes.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you for joining us on this episode. I really appreciate it. Lots of really great nuggets of information here. Thank you all for joining the BCBAs Who Build podcast powered by Head Start Health. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We release new episodes on the second and fourth Thursday of every month. You can also learn more about Head Start Health and work that we do here supporting ABA providers by visiting our website here at headstart.health. And if you would like to learn more about the quality assessment that Dr. Kristen Byra has, then visit upskillaba.com and then also her school on there as well. And if you're a BCBA interested in launching your own or growing your own practice, we'd love to connect with you. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.